Alrighty. Just give me a second to set some things up, and then we'll start. Gotta make sure settings are good. Gotta tweak some things. Gotta make some updates. Don't know how many people we're gonna get. If I can get some of the Twitch people over here, that'd be good. But yeah, I'm gonna turn my cam on in a little bit. I'm just trying to figure out, like, this is my first time streaming on YouTube. Apparently I did like some NHL streams a long time ago that I do not remember. But yeah, we're gonna make this happen. I have no idea if my alerts are set up correctly. I have no idea if my scenes are set up right, but yeah, we're gonna make this work. The first one's gonna be a bit scuffed. I'm prepared for that. I'm aware of that, but we'll see how it goes. All right, so I think the first thing I'm gonna do real quick is I'm gonna just mute myself for a little bit. Let me slap on some epidemic sounds real quick. A lot of these songs you're gonna be hearing in a minute on the actual fantasy distractions. You know what? Maybe I'll skip those. I have them set up in my playlist in order. I could technically play them in order, but in the interest of not hearing the same songs back to back, or you know what? Maybe I'll just skip the Natalai one. Nah, we'll just do some different ones. This website can be kind of loud, hopefully. Hopefully it's not too loud on stream. I'm gonna lower the volume a little bit, but I'm gonna maximize volume when we start doing the actual fantasy distractions, because I don't know if they're gonna come out loud enough. Alright, so I'm gonna slap that on. I'm gonna mute myself real fast. I'm gonna promote this on social media, and then we'll start. So just, what is the song? First of all, we need a better song to start. This is so Final Fantasy IX, the song, I love it. Alright, just let that run for a second. I'm gonna mute myself, and I'll be right back. Yo, what's up, Tim? Right? This is like straight out of Final Fantasy IX, dude. Is it loud enough, or are the volumes good? Am I too loud? Is it too loud? Just let me know. I'm gonna do a real quick post to Instagram and a real quick post to Facebook, and then we're gonna get started. I lowered it a little bit. Hopefully that's better. I'm probably gonna max out the volume on that when we're playing the fantasy distraction, so it's better. I'm here to giggle and be your biggest fan. Dude, I appreciate that. I'm happy you showed up, Sarah. I didn't think this would be your thing, but I'm happy you're here to support. I appreciate that. Okay, one last thing. I just gotta upload to Instagram, and then I'm gonna make a little quick Instagram story, and then we'll get this show on the road. I don't know how long it's gonna take, man. Going through 10 of these and explaining stuff in between, it's either gonna go really fast or take a while. I don't know. We'll see. All right, one more thing, and then we're starting. Yo, this Epidemic Sounds music I got playing right now is pretty dope. Might have to use this in a video soon. Dude, I should listen to this more on Twitch. Alright. Super awkward Instagram story complete. Promoted it on Twitter and Facebook. Fixing my hair and my headset because that's very important. We're gonna get this show on the road. Okay, that's enough of that. Pretty good music though. Like those first two songs were definitely right out of Final Fantasy IX though. Okay, we're gonna kick it up. I'm gonna play the first one. This is like YouTube Inception right here, because it's gonna be playing my YouTube videos on our YouTube live stream. So before we start the first one, let me make sure my camera is working properly. Hold on. Ooh, see, it's not. Good thing I checked. Good thing I checked. Gotta say that as creepy as possible. Tell me I'm gonna have to fix the settings every single time on this too. I have to do this every time I stream on Twitch. Yeah, it's hold on. It's zoomed out a little bit more than my usual on Twitch. Like, this is even worse. I have to do an extra setting that I normally have to do on Twitch. Ta-da! Hi, I'm here. I exist. Imagine being a YouTuber with a face reveal in the first 5 minutes. I mean, you guys have all seen what I look like on Twitch, but killing the anticipation. Okay, so we're gonna just go right into fantasy distraction number 1. I'm gonna let that play. The only thing I have to prepare you guys for with this one is I think there might be some audio issues, but I think it only happens if you turn your volume up super, super loud. At least that's how it is for me. We recently talked about this on Twitch and discovered that if you're older, you can't hear certain like background noise, and I must be too old because I can't hear it on this video unless I gotta like jack up the volume to the max. We just need to make you a VTuber image thingy. Yeah, I agree. Let's just do that instead. It's a lot easier. Then I don't have to like, not that I care what I look like anyway, clearly. Then it would be a lot easier just to go live. So I'm gonna turn my cam off. I'm gonna turn my mic off. We're gonna run fantasy distraction number 1. After, I'm gonna talk about it, and then yeah, that's pretty much it. Let me know. Excuse me. Let me just take a drink of my water real fast because I'm dying. Let me know if the volume's good. I'll be looking at chat anyway, so so let me know if the volume's okay. I'll adjust it on the fly. I'm gonna put it at max for this desktop audio. So if it's too loud, or if you guys hear any of that feedback, let me know, and I'll lower the volume a little bit. But yeah, so let's run this. I'll talk about it after, and yeah. Bye for now. Gather around, students, and let me tell you a tale about your teacher, Natalai, daughter of the sun. You see, back in the time before the era of peace that Elmore knows now, young Natalai worked in her father's trinket shop. She had been practicing her martial arts then, but she was young and still learning, much like yourselves. One day, your teacher overheard some of the locals speaking of a beast that lives in the woods. This monster was preventing the farmers from expanding and causing the townspeople much grief. So Natalai decided that she would use this trial to test herself. Knowing her father would disapprove of her actions, she gathered some supplies and journeyed out into the fields of Elmore during the day to assess the situation. After telling her father she wanted to take the day off because she wasn't feeling well, she traveled for miles. Not finding any sign of the beast, Natalai decided to take a break on one of the roads used to help guide farmers through the fields. She felt the rays of the midday sun as she wiped sweat from her brow and took a drink of water that she had brought with her. In the distance, she saw another traveler. This person was covered in ragged, torn clothing. He approached Natalai. "Are you lost?" he asked. "No," said Natalai. She spoke of the beast that brought her here and the woes of the townspeople. "I know of this beast," said the traveler. "I even know where to find its lair." Exalted by the news, Natalai rose up with renewed vigor. "Please show me." And the traveler did just that. They journeyed back the way the traveler came from for a few more miles. The sun was still beating on their backs as they reached a large cave. Natalai inspected the entrance but noticed it didn't go very deep. "Is this it?" she asked. But as she turned around, the traveler had transformed. now a grotesque, mutated monster with sharp claws and teeth, its mouth open wide in hopes of appeasing its ravenous appetite. Natalai avoided the bite, but was grazed by a claw as she ran past the monster. The frightening result of the traveler's transformation seemed to grow in size when Natalai turned to face it once more. Natalai readied herself, fists gripped tight. She didn't need a weapon, for her body was the weapon. She pushed off with her right foot and hit the beast with staggering blow after staggering blow. The monster roared as it retreated toward the cave, causing separation between them once more. Natalai pursued, but it was another trap sprung by the monster as a second creature emerged from the cave. This one was lanky, with long, sharp claws that protruded from its numerous arms. It seemed to give orders to the monster that once was the traveler. Outnumbered, Natalai tried to strengthen her resolve. If these creatures continued to torment the people of her town, then expansion could never continue. Prosperity would be unobtainable. As the monsters grew near, she felt something inside her begin to burn. Starting from the center of her chest and pushing outward through her arms and down to her fingertips. It was at this very moment that the sun had chosen her to be its vessel. Flames formed around her hands, the reflection of them dancing in her eyes. These monsters bore witness to the birth of a fire goddess. Each attack that followed was accompanied by blistering heat, charring the surface of the beasts with each strike. In mere moments, the fire that had engulfed Natalai was no longer controlling her, but she was controlling it. It was as if the monsters were but a small piece of paper, and she a conflagration. The battle that appeared to be a mismatch against Natalai was over in seconds. Naught but ash and bone remained of the creatures, and the sun's newfound daughter stood unwavering above them. The townspeople didn't know it was Natalai at first who rid them of this problem, but in time they would learn it to be her. As would any other monster foolish enough to attack the fields just outside Elmore. Soon, the monsters heard the tales of her triumphs, and the fields became the peaceful ones you know today. I'm back. Okay, so yeah, the reason why I'm not doing it on Twitch is I just figured well, there's a couple of things. YouTube made more sense because that's where the actual fantasy distractions are. And I could upload it as a video to YouTube. The other thing that is super, super awesome and clutch and kind of like a little trick to get your numbers up, any watched time on a stream on YouTube actually counts as watched hours toward monetizing. So it's almost like a way to raise your watched time, because you need like 4,000 hours of watched time to be able to monetize your videos, like over the course of 12 months, I think they give you. So by doing live streams every 10 weeks is the plan. Hopefully I can inflate that number a little bit. So if I do ever get the subscribers, you also need 1,000 subscribers. If I ever get 1,000 subscribers, at least I will hopefully be close to the watched hours, or a little closer than I would have been if I wasn't doing streams. So that's the plan. Part of my hair is sticking up, and it's like, bruh. Okay. So Natalai was the first one. Listening to that one, the quality of these got so much better, and I didn't even realize until listening to that back just now. In the past, I would stream our D1 raids to YouTube because it would just create the video. Yeah, it's just, I'm just going to upload this as a video after, and anybody who didn't get to see the stream, if they want to see it, they can watch it. It's like a different way to kind of experience the playlist. Like, instead of watching the playlist, you could just watch the recap. Watch it with me, watch it with me interacting with the chat and everything. Get a little background information. But yeah, it's pretty interesting listening to that back after doing the 10th one. I had to record the 10th one. I was gonna get ThePizzzaKing to record the 10th one, but he had a trip and he wasn't able to record it in time, so I ended up recording this one. I'll be doing Mondays as well, which ironically is going to be the first continuation. So far every story has been, some of them have been set in the same world. Most of them are taking place on Fenrir, but none of them have really continued off of each other. But number 11 is actually going to be another story about Natalai. So it'll be the first one that continues a story. But even though I'm going to be doing that a lot, I'm still going to try to make it so that they are also standalone stories. So like if you're starting with number 11, you won't be completely lost. You'll still be able to watch it and like enjoy it and understand everything that's going on without having watched the one we just watched. But yeah, man, like I'm going to be real brief about this one. There wasn't much to it. This was the first one that I wrote. This was one I was actually able to get art for. The art is from Coinbox Tees. The logo behind me, also made by Coinbox Tees. The only thing not made by them is our little profile picture and / watermark. It's the same picture, but that was made by our buddy Marco, aka Der Monster Lord from Twitch. Monster Lord hooked it up with the profile picture. I'm happy he got to be part of that. That's another little bit of info. But yeah, that Natalai picture is pretty awesome, man. I wish I could have continued to get art made for all of them. After the next one, it's gonna go to the point where it's just the logo and some lettering. Well, actually, it's not even the logo until a couple in anyway. Maybe someday if I'm able to monetize these, or if I just end up making money somewhere more consistently, we'll go back to doing art. But it's just, not only is it too expensive, it's more so the timing, right? Like I need an artist that can get me a piece of art every week. So like the timing's gonna have to be, I'm gonna have to plan so far ahead if I want to start doing art for all of them, because I'm gonna have the story figured out, the character figured out, the art that I want, and I'm gonna have to have it ready by the time that one comes out. I'm already starting to get ahead of the game. Like 11's coming out next week. I'm about 8 stories ahead. So if I can get to the point where I'm like consistently like 10 stories ahead, or maybe even like 20 stories ahead, then it might be a little easier to get art made for all of them, because then I could start like planning way in the future and get like 10 pieces of art made for those. And then when those come along, I'll have those already. And then I'd be already working on the next set, and so on and so forth. So it's a shame that we can't do art for all of them, but it's just too expensive. It's just, there's no way I wouldn't be able to do it. It's the expense and the timing. So if I could get the timing down and the money down, then we'll go back to it. But yeah, that was my other plan. So so I did the first one and I did the second one. My plan is to do maybe like 2 per 10. So like for the next set of 10 that's coming up, I'm gonna see if maybe I could get some art made. But at this point, it would have to be for like the later releases. So like maybe like 18 and 19, or maybe like I was thinking 16. I really wanted a piece of art for 16. I wrote that one already. So maybe I'll get one made for like 16 and maybe like 19. But yeah, I gotta start thinking about that and seeing if I have the money to pull that off. But I was thinking maybe like 2 every 10, just to have like some special ones thrown in. But I gotta figure all of that out and get the artist figured out. I'm sure Coinbox Tees would help out if they're free, and I know a couple of artists from Twitch I can maybe get to help. But yeah, so Natalai is a lot of inspiration from like monks, from Final Fantasy, so she fights with her fists. Not that there's monks that fight, like not monks that fight with fists outside of Final Fantasy, but Final Fantasy is where I go. And I knew I wanted a character that was gonna have like the similar deal to Superman, where they get their powers from the sun. But I didn't want her to be like super overpowered either. So she has fire magic and fire abilities that she gets directly from the sun. And she just protects her village and fights some monsters. You'll see where she goes from there in the one that's coming out Monday, which I can tease a little bit. I've been watching a lot of Cobra Kai lately. She opens her own dojo, and she kind of becomes a sensei for people in the village that she's from. So this takes place quite a bit in the future after the events of this story, and she's a bit more seasoned, a little more comfortable with her powers, and some stuff happens that you get to see her fight again, maybe, possibly. Tune in Monday. Okay. There's not too much about Natalai. She's got powers from the sun, and she beats up monsters and protects people. Good times. All right, we can jump into the second one. So the second one, is really, really important to the overall story that I'm trying to tell here. The overall story that I'm trying to tell here, because these stories are connected in a way. So this next one is pretty important to that. Man, this got 3 dislikes. I'm triggered. Okay, whatever. It has almost 1,000 views now, though, which is sick. And almost 1,000 views, it only has 3 dislikes and 8 likes. I guess I could live with that. I am bad, and this is the first time I've heard this. I'm really picky in my reading about how combat is described. I rather like the high-level view of it without going into fine detail. Yeah, so if you read my books, I go into heavy combat detail. I'm big on like fighting descriptions and stuff. With these, because they're so short, I really just want it to be like as vague as possible to leave things to the imagination, which is a little harder with Natalai. Like you'll see in the future stories that like the combat is very brief. With Natalai, it's a little harder because I want her to be like a martial artist. So combat is such a big part of her story. So I'm happy you were happy with what's in there. I actually thought I went a little overboard in this one. So the fact that you liked it as is makes me pretty happy. All right, so for this next one, which is called Kai, the Starlight Samurai. This one is interesting because so my original plan for all these was that the narrator was another character set in the same universe, which I mean is still kind of the theme going forward. Like not many of the stories are told by the actual character. Like this one is somebody telling a story about Natalai. This next one coming up is a story that's actually told from a villain's point of view. And I did a Western-y accent for this one, and I apologize because it's terrible. So let's jump into it, and then I'll talk about it after. I don't think I could write combat as an actual martial artist. I think I might get lost in the details of it. Yeah, combat is... it's something that a lot of people say you shouldn't go into a lot of detail with, but I think I do well putting it together in the way that it makes sense. I've gotten good feedback as far as my like fight scenes go in the past. I'm probably better at telling stories like describing combat than I am at most other storytelling things, which is probably not a good thing. So I'm just gonna roll this next one and contemplate my right as an author. All right, let's run the second one and then we'll talk about it.
If you've been to the planet All-10 recently, then you've heard the stories of the Starlight Samurai. A true one-man army hired by the Galaxy Federation to shut down a terrorist group known as the Revo. At first, the people of all 10 were happy. Send in one man to get the job done. Little did they know this battle would leave their planet in shambles. They say the Starlight Samurai is half man, half machine. That some doctor found his body in a scrap heap. You ask me, I think they forgot to put his emotions back in when they were building him. The Galaxy Federation don't know what they unleashed on all 10, but the results speak for themselves. The planet is a damn wasteland now. How he does all that damage with just a measly little katana is beyond me. He's fast as lightning and as strong as an ox according to the rumors. One man doing all that damage sounds a bit ridiculous, don't it? I used to joke with my partner that I'd love to see him in action so I could judge for myself. You ever hear that old quote, be careful what you wish for? Turns out the Federation caught wind of a group on our planet known as the Asteroid Remnants. They're a real treacherous lot. Ain't one of them worth a spit. I don't think the Starlight Samurai even had time to wash his hands of all 10 blood before they gave him the nod and sent him in our direction. At first, we didn't even know he landed on our shores. Next thing you know, whole cities are collapsing. I walked through the city of Denar after the Starlight Samurai gave chase to the remnants through there. Or at least what was left of Denar. Bearing witness to the aftermath myself was an eye-opening experience. It was painful. It was horrifying. It was magnificent. I was impressed. I was inspired. Entire buildings were cut in half. A street or two had the pavement torn up. I heard on the news that he caught one or two of the remnants there and had a showdown with them. It was brief. He made mincemeat out of them. Supposedly if you blinked you missed the whole fight. A katana swing or two and it was all over. The destruction left me in awe but gave me a new sense of purpose. You see, on this here planet, known as Ronka, killing is most of our jobs. Hunting bounties on people's heads is what we do. It's incorporated into our system and a part of our everyday lives. For that very reason, this planet is practically abandoned. These cities he's dropping, empty. The people he's killing as collateral, just as bad as he is. Sure, there are some civil places left here, but if you think this fancy bastard is wiping out this planet before it wipes him out first, well, you're gonna lose that bet, I promise you that. Over the years, Ronka has become the home of the worst in the galaxy. When it comes to being bad, though, I'm the baddest. So let that Starlight Samurai run wild on our planet while he can. But sooner or later, him and I, we're gonna have ourselves a little play date. Don't get me wrong, I ain't here to save this miserable planet. I'm just here to show everyone else that around here, I'm the king.
I hate listening to that one because the accent is so bad. But I don't know. I've gotten actually some decent feedback on the accent. Personally, it's pretty cringe. But I tried my best, and that's all that matters. The quality definitely gets better as we go. I honestly didn't think these were as like the the talking parts are very low, and the sound, like the music, is very loud. I think I do a better job of like proportionally figuring out the volumes as we go. These were done months ago. There's a new sheriff in town, exactly. Except he's a bad guy. But yeah, like these I did months prior. So like Natalai even though it's like we're celebrating 10 weeks, the first two actually came out a long time ago because I was getting art made for every single one, and I was writing the story and recording it myself, and so they were taking a lot longer to make. Now I'm releasing them weekly. Like starting from the next one, the third one, they were starting to release weekly. So things changed quite a bit going into the next one. The next one is going to be the first one read by somebody else. Our buddy DerpyengineerHD on Twitch. Well, actually on Twitch, I think he's the best boys because he has like a collective channel with a couple of the other guys who read for us on these. He does the next one, and as I started to get the other guys to start reading them, it was a little easier to kind of like line up the volume, and the readings were a bit better because they've done stuff like this before and I haven't. But I think the ones that I read get a little bit better too as we go along, just because I was using a different program to record these two than what I use to record them now. So I think the overall quality of my stuff in general got better. But you won't hear me again for a bit. Let me set up the next one. Hold on. When do we hear me again is the question. Let's see. You won't hear me again until 8. So when we get up to the 8th one, maybe we could see if I improved or not. I don't know. Maybe it's a no, but we'll see. But yeah, that one was fun to record. So like I had the idea for this in my head for a while. And I remember I very specifically wanted it to have that like westerny vibe to it. Because the character that was supposed to be narrating it was a character that I came up with a long time ago. That was supposed to be in book like 9 or 10 of A Soldier's Crest. So I was basing him off of that character originally, but the character from book 9 and 10 of Soldier's Crest got changed also. So it was kind of like a mixture of those two characters. So like that's kind of how that happened and went down. And it works out because now I can just use this character as kind of Kai's rival ultimately. And I can write some stories about him. I'm not sure when the story about him is going to land, but there will be a story about him. My original idea, like I said, was to have narrators that are also characters set in these worlds. And then I was going to do like the original idea was like 3 of each character. And then after I finished the third one, the next one would be the narrator's story. So like in this case, it would be like 3 stories about Kai. And then the next one would be about this southerny sounding dude. But I scrapped that idea. I'm still going with the like multiple character like arcs in a sense, and characters getting multiple stories and whatnot. But overall, I am not gonna make stories about all of the narrators. Not that there won't be stories about some of the narrators, but for the most part, that original idea was scrapped. For all of the stories anyway, but some of them will still have it, if that makes any sense. But yeah, so Kai is a cyborg samurai who tracks down bad guys in space, but I wanted to go for like a Vash the Stampede from Trigun feel to him, where he's a cyborg and doesn't really have like feelings or thoughts for himself. Which is very unlike Vash. but similar to Vash, he comes into these planets meaning well and trying to do good things, but in the process he just like wrecks everything. He destroys cities, he leaves the place in shambles. He does more damage than good in some instances. So he starts to build up a bit of a reputation, which is very similar to Vash. And yeah, he starts to take on this persona that's a little bit more anti-hero-ish, I guess. And he's gonna have a lot of bad guys chasing after him and a lot of good guys chasing after him too. So but his story is gonna be very important as far as the overall story goes. So in other words, like as we start to tell stories on Fenrir, on different planets, you're gonna start to realize that if Kai shows up on a planet, things are about to go down. So there will be more references to Kai in some of these stories. He comes up one more time, I believe, in the first 10 stories, but he'll be mentioned a lot in the future as well. So the general idea is that when he shows up on a planet, there's probably going to be some stuff going down. And yeah, it's going to be part of the fun, just kind of setting that up and teasing it. So the next one that we're going to do is a story. I love this. This was one of my favorite ones that I wrote too. I couldn't wait to get this out. And I had such a cool idea for the art for this. Maybe one day I'll go back and change the thumbnail or something, but or maybe the next story we do about her, I'll make that one of the ones we get art made. That's such a cool idea for art for this one. I'll explain it after. If he shows up, cancel Christmas. Exactly. Yeah, if he's coming to town, it's time to get out of there. That's a good way to put it. But yeah, so this next one is the one that's done by our buddy Derpy. I put his voiceover as DerpyengineerHD for this. Let me find his actual Twitch real fast. Yeah, it's just the best boys, but boys has an I instead of a Y. If you guys want to check him out. But he's going to be the one reading this next one. This one is about a girl named Eden, the healer of Askar. We'll just jump into it and then I'll talk about it. But yeah, as far as Kai goes, that's basically it. I mean, we're setting up this kind of rivalry between him and the narrator. We're kind of establishing the fact that when he shows up, like Tim said so eloquently, cancel Christmas, because stuff's about to go down and your city's probably going to get destroyed. But yeah, so let's listen to the third one with Eden, and then we'll talk about it.
According to an order of mages, once every 2,000 years a person is born with a gift of magic. Wizards, warlocks, and sorcerers are normal in Askar, but this chosen magic user in particular is unlike anything seen before. Her name is Eden, and she's been doing magic for as long as she can remember. Her parents used to joke that she came out of the womb casting spells. Eden's power was always a mystery to her family, since none of their ancestors ever practiced the art. The aforementioned order of mages heard tales of a young girl who could cast spells. Curious, they traveled to Askar to ascertain the existence of little Eden. They were quickly surprised by her talent, but more so impressed by her sheer power of the child. Quickly, they sent members of the order to watch her and train her properly. Each and every passing day, they started to realize how special Eden was. When it came to common spells, like making fire or conjuring ice, the mages were able to teach Eden in a single day. Before long, young Eden was able to throw fireballs and create waterfalls. The mages were enamored by her potential. However, it did not take long for Eden to realize how dangerous her power was. The more the mages pushed her, the stronger she became, and without the proper control, she could hurt those around her. The fear of pushing those she loved away and being seen more as a threat than a hope for her people weighed heavily on her as she aged. One day, while helping her mother in the garden, Eden fell and got hurt. She lighted on a wooden stake and cut her leg rather deeply. Her mother panicked, but Eden didn't cry. They went to one of the healers in Askar. That's when she saw healing magic for the first time. The healer sealed Eden's wound, but wasn't able to fully heal it right away. That night, Eden tried the spell she saw the healer use and finished the job herself. Her mother was shocked to see her walking without as much as a limp the next day. She looked at where the wound was and saw nothing. She asked Eden how she healed it so fast, and Eden told her that she healed it herself. Later that day, during one of Eden's training sessions, the mages were upset to find out Eden no longer wanted to study magic used for war and battle, but instead wanted to become a healer, to help those around her instead of frightening them. In a last-ditch effort, afraid they may lose her as one of their own, the mages suggested that Eden go on a final test. A mage pilgrimage to the Temple of Frost. Not knowing anything about this trial, her parents convinced her to at least consider all of her options. She prepared properly and left for the temple. On the way, she met others who were returning from the pilgrimage. Some were successful, at least that's what she could piece together from the looks of them. Some were less fortunate, evident by the cuts and bruises on their bodies. The pilgrimage was meant to take 3 days. Though 5 days had passed, Eden did not return home to Askar. It was known in Askar that those who took longer than 3 days were truly the very unfortunate ones. Those who did not return alive. Her parents, worried, confronted the mages and asked them to look for their daughter. By the time the mages found Eden, 2 days had passed. She hardly used any of her supplies, and she was kneeling down on the road, healing someone who had triumphed during the pilgrimage. She patched up the person and sent them on their way back home. The mages approached Eden and asked if she succeeded. "Has it been 3 days already?" Eden asked with a smile. She explained to the mages that she never made it to the trial. She told them stories of each person she helped, their names, if they won or lost, what injuries they had, and what she had fixed. The more complicated injuries forced her to study from a book of healing she borrowed from a healer in Askar, but she figured it out and helped the people who were hurt. As much as it pained the mages to lose such a promising, powerful mage, they could see it in Eden's eyes that this was her calling. She could really give the people of Askar peace and sense of protection, instead of bringing about war and destruction. Once the mages returned to the village, they confronted the parents of Eden and told her she was all right, that they were leaving town because there was nothing else they could teach their daughter. "Did she succeed?" asked Eden's father. The mages nodded. They told her father that Eden had completed the pilgrimage in the way only she could. She far exceeded their expectations in a very unpredictable way. They reminded Eden's parents just how special their little girl was, then left Askar forever. When Eden returned home, her parents were proud of her decision. In the years to come, they would help Eden care and nurture Askar, giving it something it hadn't had in a long time. Hope.
I love the way he just cuts it off at hope there, and like you can't fully hear him say hope. But Derpy did an amazing job on that one. He was perfect for that one, I think. Eden is just, that story is one of my favorites. I do like cast magic missile too. I was thinking, I don't remember writing this or it being in there. You know how many times I've listened to this? Probably way more than I could count. Came out of the womb casting spells. I know they're just like you would think like she came out of the womb casting spells. Like that sounds painful, man. Sounds like a painful experience. Is this some Final Fantasy X music? And with the pilgrimage, the 10 music makes sense. It's actually not, but I was going for a like Yuna-esque vibe for her. So I'm happy that you made that connection, even if it was through the music. The song is actually What is this one called? This one is called Append by Martin Gauffin. Gauffin. I just got it off Epidemic Sounds. That's where all of our music comes from. Epidemic Sounds provides like copyright-free music. But yeah, it definitely has a Final Fantasy X vibe going for it. So I'm happy you made that connection though, because I definitely was going for a Yuna like character with her. So I'm happy with that. Poor mother, dude, I know, man. Imagine casting Magic Missile as you're coming out of the womb. Like that can't be a good time. Cannot be a good time. All right. So, Eden's story is pretty great. This is kind of like what I'm going for a lot of these stories, where it's a bit less predictable, I guess. Like, she's this extremely powerful mage potentially, but she has no interest in hurting anybody. So she goes on this pilgrimage. She doesn't come back for 5 days. She was only supposed to take 3. And then you find out that she didn't even make it there at all. Which I really like that concept. Flies out of the womb like Korra in the opening scene of her Avatar season. I still haven't watched that, but I really need to, man. I've heard so many good things, and I think she looks awesome, but I just never watched it. Does she really come flying out of the womb? Like, throwing a shoryuken or something? Straight up hurricane kicks the doctor? Like, that's what I'm picturing. I gotta start taking my drinks when I'm not on camera, because I'm not on camera a lot during this. But you know what? I need a drink. Okay, so deal with it. Yeah, so Eden's a special one for me. I really liked that story. It was the first one where like I wrote it and I was like, these are the type of stories that I want to tell going forward. Not that every single one could have like a big like twist, because then it's like, not only are you expecting the twist, but I feel like it doesn't hit the same if all of them have some kind of twist. No, but you see her at like 3 years old, fire and earth bending, all while screaming, "I am the Avatar." Oh, okay. I thought she like literally came out of the womb straight up like uppercutting somebody. Somebody's getting it. All right. So that is the 3rd one. Now the 4th one, I know I've been saying all of them are very important to the story, but 4th one's also pretty important to the story though. So this 4th one is about a guy called Lord Kazai. This story is told by our buddy ThePizzzaKing, aka our buddy Jake, who we've done some Twitch streams with. We try to promote him a lot in the channel, and in the Discord. He has been doing like voiceover stuff on YouTube for a while, and he is also a writer that I met through Twitch. And we did a stream one time just talking about our writing. Like, we kind of like interviewed each other. It was a really cool stream. But I had mentioned this idea to him about the fantasy distraction stuff, and he said that he would be able to provide some voiceover work and some people, for me to utilize on these. So he's been really big, like behind the scenes, helping me kind of throw all this stuff together, especially after the first few came out, and then I kind of abandoned the art idea. It was nice to have some different people reading, and it's pretty nice in general to have different people reading, so I don't have to read all of them, because then it's just going to be me reading. Like, I'm not going to be able to do voices for all of them, because I am not a voice actor. Like, I'm just doing my best. So it's nice to get some different voices involved, and participating in this. So it's very cool that we kind of have this rotation that we're using. Even though I read the 8th one, the 10th one, and I'm reading the 11th one, so it is a lot of my voice. But it is kind of cool to have some other options for some of them. So yeah, go show Jake some love on Twitch, twitch.tv/ThePizzzaKing. Pizza has an extra Z in it, so it's 3 Z's. But definitely go check him out. And Derpy, like I mentioned earlier. And yeah, let's just watch this one and then we'll talk about it. I think I talked about everything I wanted to talk about with Eden. I just really like her story. Her story is pretty self-explanatory, so there's really not much else to it. Other than she could have been a really destructive and powerful mage as far as offensively goes, and she decided, nope, I just want to heal people. I want to be a good person. I don't want to destroy people. I want to give them hope. And that's her thing. That's her deal. But now we're going to learn about Lord Kazai, which I'll talk more about after it's over. But it is important to some future, well, a lot of future videos, actually. So let's listen to that one and then we'll talk about it.
Living in Undead meant you knew 2 things for certain: how to farm its rich land, and that Lord Kazai was your ruler. Agriculture kept Undead profitable, and it was the hub that Lord Kazai used to manage the rest of his lands. The entire east was his and no one questioned it. No one except Ingvar. King Ingvar, who ruled the west, was Lord Kazai's rival, but they both didn't always have their titles. In fact, the only reason they owned these stations of power was due in part to each other. Allow me to explain. Before the days of Lord Kazai and King Ingvar, they both served as the respective right-hand men of their rulers. Kazai in the east and Ingvar in the west. Kazai served under Lord Dimitros Unden, for which this town was named. Ingvar served under King Wellick. The 2 they served were similarly rivals in their own way, but time had not been kind to either and they both soon fell ill. Kazai and Ingvar didn't take their titles because nature ran its course. They took their titles because fate did. In a last effort to settle their disputes before they died, Lord Unden and King Wellick chose a representative for a battle destined to settle their differences. A battle of this caliber required them to send their
What the heck happened?
strongest warrior.
And we're back.
Of course, Lord Unden chose Kazai, and King Wellick chose Ingvar. The night before the battle, Lord Unden presented Lord Kazai with a new katana, the strongest blade in all the land, Rednefed. The blade itself was imbued with the power to block any attack, and made Kazai nearly invincible. The battle itself raged for days, and it is said that the heavens wept and the ground was torn asunder. Mountains crumbled, and the oceans shifted. The world waited with bated breath for the victor to return, but both men survived. No one truly knows what happened on the mountain, but Kazai and Ingvar returned to their respective rulers. Lord Unden was furious when Kazai returned. He was unable to get the closure he desired, so he ordered his men to put Kazai in a cell and torture him. He bled and he screamed, but they could not break him. Despite the wounds, it was obvious that something happened when he was wielding Rednefed for that legendary encounter with Ingvar. The blade had become a part of him, and just like the blade, he could withstand anything. This drove Lord Unden even further into madness. He couldn't defeat his rival, and now he couldn't torture the man who denied him his victory. Lord Unden decided to banish Kazai from his land. His men unchained Kazai and removed him from the cell. They dragged him out of Lord Unden's castle and threw him to the ground just outside. Much to the surprise of Lord Unden's knights and Lord Unden himself, there were many people gathered outside the castle that day. Kazai looked up to these people, wondering why they were there. Then, he heard one of them speak. "It's him! The legendary warrior! Lord Kazai!" The people referred to him as Lord, but he didn't hold that title yet. "The one who stood toe-to-toe with Ingvar?" said another. "He who shook the world." Shook the world, Kazai thought. He couldn't help but smile. He put his hand out to help himself up, but what he felt on the ground in front of him was the sheath of Rednefed. Somehow the blade was on the ground in front of him. Kazai did not question it. Instead, he stood up and proudly raised the blade. The people cheered, and at that moment he noticed they were armed. Lord Unden's knights didn't stand a chance. Neither did those inside the castle. How can you stop a man who can't be cut down? If Ingvar could not do it, how could the sick Lord Unden? In mere moments, Lord Unden was dead. Had he not made poor decisions, he would have been dead due to natural causes soon anyway, and Lord Kazai may never have become Lord at all. Though unlikely, since the people obviously wanted him to rule. Lord Kazai took on his new title, and the people loved him for it. Tales of his battle with King Ingvar would continue for generations, though no one truly knew what happened up there. But much like the people of Unden knew Kazai was their ruler and how to farm, the East knew two more things. The day Kazai battled Ingvar, he changed the entire world, and their invincible leader would protect them no matter what attack they faced.
All right, I don't know what happened in the middle there. I'm going to try refreshing YouTube before we watch the next one, but yeah, so Jake did a great job. Yeah, I'm sorry about that, Tim. I don't know what happened, dude. It just out of nowhere. And then I like that the quality was bad, but it fixed itself after. I don't know. YouTube being weird. But yeah, man, Jake did such a good job with that one. It's like, it's so good. It's such a good reading, man. It's such a good reading. The character voices he does, the little hesitations, he's so good, man. I'm trying to like pick up and learn some things from him whenever I have to read some, but so good. Yo, Dressel, what's up, man? Dude, like I love that one. It's so good, but it sets up so many different things also. So, you're gonna hear more about Kazai and Ingvar, or at least things that allude to both of them, a lot in the future ones. So you learn about these East versus West rulers that are about to fight each other, or that have this like ongoing rivalry, but they're like way too old to see this rivalry through to the end. And they're both like so old and sickly at this point that they are like about to die of old age or some other complications. And they want to settle this once and for all. So they take their two best fighters and pit them against each other. And the battle itself is referenced a lot in the stories. East Coast versus West Coast beef. That's right, Tim. Exactly. So the battle itself is referenced a lot. And it's one of those like stories that everybody has like their own version of it. So nobody really knows what happened up there. You know that they fought to a stalemate because neither of them died. And it was supposed to be a fight to the death. King Tupac versus King Biggie, exactly. And funny enough, I wanted there's going to be an Ingvar story in the next set of 10 that we'll talk about more when we do our next 10-week recap video or celebration video, whatever you want to call it. The Ingvar story, I actually wanted to get our buddy Lambo Lada. I wanted to get him to rap it. But I'm going to try to get him to rap a different one. But I was going to have it be all about the battle, but it was going to rhyme, and he was going to rap it. But I'm really bad at writing music, so that one's put on hold until I could figure it out. Which I'm trying to write a music one for number 19. That's how far ahead I am. I'm technically writing 18 right now, but 19 I want it to have some kind of music to it. And I'm having a hard time writing that. So I don't know if 19 will end up being a music one, but I'm trying to make it a thing. But yeah, so this epic battle happens on this mountaintop, and everybody has their own story about it. Kazai has this epic sword. Epic rap battles of fantasy distractions? Exactly, man. Dude, that would be sick. If I could get to that level, start doing some epic rap battles of history, but with my characters, that'd be sick. Or maybe epic rap battles of history does one about my characters in the future if we ever blow up. That'd be sick. So Reynard is just defender spelled backwards. That's a little tidbit you won't find out anywhere else but here unless I put it in writing. So Kazai's sword can block any attack. So killing him, not easy. And then we're gonna learn about Ingvar in number 15, which is about 5 weeks away. So when 15 rolls around, Ingvar's sword is like the polar opposite. So Ingvar's sword is said to cut through anything. So obviously not Reynard, but so you have this one guy who could cut anything, and then you have this one guy who could defend any attack. So obviously they fight to a stalemate because they counter each other so perfectly. And then this rivalry that these two older guys had, the kings before them, carries over into their reign. So now you have this epic rivalry that starts with this epic mountaintop battle, and it carries over into a lot of the stuff going on this planet where most of these stories take place. So very, very, very big. The sword can block any attack, or he can block any attack. So it's the legend is that the sword can block any attack. So he thinks he can after, and he's like inspired by it. That's why when he's getting tortured, he's like, I could take this. I wield a sword that can block anything. So kind of a yes. Okay, I'm happy you went there, Tim, because you probably know this. You probably know this. So that story, Muramasa's blade that he makes, you know, so anybody who doesn't know, they were like blacksmiths back in the day. Masamune and Muramasa, or Masamune, Muramasa. And they both were rivals, and they Muramasa was actually like his student, I think, and then they became rivals. I don't have all the information, right? I'm not Wikipedia. But they have this like competition where they need to make blades, and they're trying to make the sharpest blade that could cut through anything, essentially. And Muramasa, the name of Muramasa's blade is 10,000 Cold Nights, which I thought was dope. All right, that is a cool name. Forgot the name of Masamune's blade. I don't think it was nearly as cool though. So when we get to Ingvar's story, we learn that Ingvar's katana is called Cold Night, and it's a reference to 10,000 Cold Nights. Yeah, they were master and apprentice, and then they kind of became like rivals, and then they wanted to see who could make the sharpest blade. Masamune won, I think, because his blade didn't cut everything, but it was like a nice blade. Like they consider Muramasa's blade evil because it was like cutting fish, it was cutting leaves, it was cutting everything. And Masamune's would only like finely cut leaves, and then like the fish would like swim over to it, but it wouldn't cut the fish. So they considered Muramasa's weapon evil. So Masamune actually won, and in some tales or some stories about it, they like execute Muramasa because of this, because he's making like demon weapons. I don't know, it's crazy. It's a crazy story. I highly recommend checking out that story. But it did inspire me for Ingvar's sword when we get there. It is called Cold Night. It is a reference to 10,000 Cold Nights. And yeah, it's supposed to be a really, really sharp blade that can cut through anything. Actually, the title, I'm revealing a lot about Ingvar's story, but you're going to hear a lot more about them, you know, as these stories progress because they're important to the story. But Ingvar's story is actually called Cut Through Anything. So you guys are ready. Tender Hands. Yeah, definitely not as cool as 10,000 Cold Nights. Right? I mean, Tender Hands is... I mean, it's okay. But it's not as cool as 10,000 Cold Nights. Can a butter knife do the same? I guess. Can you cut fish with a butter knife? I guess. But was it made by a legendary samurai blacksmith? I mean, maybe. Maybe there were some legendary samurai blacksmiths making some kitchenware. I don't know. But is your butter knife called 10,000 Cold Nights? I doubt it. You massage there? Dude, I'm going to name a butter knife 10,000 Cold Nights. I'm going to pick a butter knife in my house. And that one's going to be 10,000 Cold Nights. Oh, with Tender Hands? Yeah, I don't know where they were going with Tender Hands. I'm going to refresh my YouTube and hope that this one doesn't crash. All right, so we are now moving on to number 5. Don't play. Okay, we're good. This one is going to be read by our friend Janine. Also a Twitch streamer, if you guys are curious. Janine, Jeanine, Usagi, USAGI, all one word, JeanineUsagi on Twitch, twitch.tv/, I'm pretty sure it's all one. I have her Instagram on here. Hold on, let me make sure. Let me make sure this is her Twitch. Wait, I don't want to promote the wrong channel. I'm pretty sure this actually does it on. Yeah. The way it is going to be on screen is how it is, just with twitch.tv/ in front of it. It doesn't come out as much in this one. Well, it comes out a little bit. She has an awesome accent, dude. She has an amazing accent. I love it. So this one is called Eliana, the Beauty of Vesuva. This one, it has a little twist in it that I really like too. There are many versions of the story, but one of them is that the leaves on the surface of the water would avoid the blade. And another story says the blade cut them easily and then the leaf reformed. Yeah, so like the Masamune one is like, it's not evil. So it's not cutting everything. So it's just like, it's finally cutting, not finally, like precise is what I'm trying to say. Finally cutting the leaves and not harming the animals or anything else. And Muramasa's blade is just like ripping everything to shreds. Honestly, like there's like in the story there's a monk that decides that, right? He walks over and he's like, I think this is the finer blade. Like, who asked this guy? If I was Muramasa, I'd be like, nobody asked you. But he walks over and he's like, I think this one's the finer blade because it doesn't cut you know, everything. And then they execute Muramasa because they think his blade is evil. This guy's out here making demon weapons. What a jerk. Masamune would cut but not damage the leaf. Dude, I knew Tim was gonna know this story. I mean, he probably looked up some of this stuff. But I knew Tim would know what I'm talking about. And it's awesome that he went there without me even saying it, dude. Sick. It's my man right there. All right, so we're going to jump right into the 5th one, read by our friend Janine. I think they call her J9 for short, which I thought was a really cool nickname. Get lost, Mug. Nobody asked you. Yeah, Tachi Fudo, exactly. Like, come on, man. If I was Muramasa, I'd be like, bruh. Like, come on. Literally no one was talking to you. I mean, maybe they were talking really loud. Like, Muramasa's giving him, like, the DX chop. telling him to suck it. Like, my blade cuts more things than yours, and the monk's just like, correction, you're making demon weapons. I still would have been like, nobody asked you, bro. All right. We've gone way off topic, but it had to be said. But yeah, like, I'm happy you went there, because the Kazai Ingvar stuff, it's not really like based on that, because they're not blacksmiths, but their weapons are heavily tied to, well, at least Ingvar's weapon is heavily tied to that story about 10,000 cold nights and tender hands. I just imagine like them showing up, but like, let's say there's a crowd of people there, and Muramasa's just like, my sword's called 10,000 cold nights. And then Masamune pulls this out and he's like, this is tender hands. And just everybody laughs at him. My favorite FGO story revolved around that character. Oh, really? That's awesome. I gotta check that out. Muramasa or Masamune? Which one did they use in there? Or was it are you talking, did they have a character about the random monk who butts in and is nosy? All right, I'm gonna play this one and then we'll talk about it.
Oh, Eliana. Sweet Eliana. What a troubled beauty she is. Oh, pardon me. I didn't see you there. Please sit down. Care to hear a story? Great! I was just reminiscing about sweet Eliana, the beauty of Vesuva. Surely you've been to the port. Regardless, everyone with ears has heard the tales of Eliana and her beauty, but in case you haven't, it is I who shall enlighten you. A few months ago, rumors began to circulate about this woman named, well, you probably figured it out, Eliana. Eliana was unlike any woman to have ever set foot in Vesuva before. Tall, skinny, with long, silky, dirty blonde hair and hazel eyes. She drove the men in the port wild. Not that it was hard to do. The port of Vesuva saw all manner of scoundrels and pirates known to this side of Fenrir. Even I would be seen as a priest amongst these men, but Eliana, she was a cut above the rest. But dear, sweet Eliana, she had more surprises than just her looks. She had traveled far and wide, no doubt capturing every eye that viewed her, but she only searched because she was bored. Can you believe it? A woman who can have anything she wants. Bored! Settling down and marrying a rich man was not good enough for her, and a big reason why she found herself in the port of Vesuva. You see, the young lass was desperate for something new, desperate for adventure. Any of those pirates would have taken her on their crew in a heartbeat, but you can't confine such a goddess to the sea. Oh no, her need for adventure had to be satisfied on land, right here on Fenrir. So she walked Vesuva in search of news, tidbits, whatever she could hear. She went to bars and town gatherings. She checked every notice board and flyer in hopes she would find what she was looking for. Then one day, she journeyed out into the forest all on her own. Our sweet little Eliana out in the wild! Could you believe it? After walking through the forest for some time, Eliana came upon a traveler. This traveler had clearly been through some things. She could tell by his dirty clothes and the way he was leaning. "Are you alright?" she asked. The man went on to tell her that he had lost something very precious to him, and the monsters that stole it had brought it to a nearby cave. Clearly, he was in no condition to go retrieve the item himself, and Eliana saw an opportunity for adventure, so she offered to recover it for him. The man explained that it was a trinket he had received from his mother, who had passed just a few months prior to their meeting. The trinket was connected to a silver chain and had a sapphire placed firmly in the center. Eliana set out with her newfound purpose, a potentially very dangerous one for a young beauty, but she was not frightened. Whatever was in that cave, she knew she could handle. However, when she arrived at the cave, she heard people arguing inside. Other adventurers had beaten her here. She approached the cave slowly and heard the people rummaging through the treasure, But before she could enter the cave, a man spoke out from behind her. It startled her.
Wandered into the wrong parts.
The man said to Eliana, I'm just here looking for a friend's trinket. He said he lost it and some monsters took it here, she replied. The man led her into the cave and showed her the monsters. There were a large group of goblins dead on the floor. The leader of these humans was a female pirate, one who you would think would be jealous of Eliana's beauty, but instead she respected it. The two spoke to each other, and the pirate offered Eliana the trinket in question as long as she didn't tell the authorities that she and her pirates were looting the cave. Eliana agreed and rushed out of the cave quickly to return to the traveler. She was smiling that she succeeded in her mission without much struggle or hardship. When she returned to the post where she found the traveler, she didn't see the traveler anywhere. She held the trinket close to her chest and sighed. Beautiful Eliana wanted nothing more than to make this person's day. Then she heard someone call out from behind a nearby tree.
Over here!
They said. Cautiously, Eliana approached a tree. What stepped out from behind it was a tiny goblin.
My cloaking spell wore off,
The goblin explained. In that moment, Eliana's heart sank. You see, I'm sure you noticed by now the monsters in this tale were not the goblins. Eliana knelt down and returned a trinket to the goblin. She apologized for the behavior of her own people, though an apology from Eliana would never be enough to excuse what had happened to this goblin's friends and family. It didn't matter how beautiful Eliana was. The goblin took the trinket and thanked Eliana.
I know the actions of some of your people don't represent the actions of all of your people,
said the goblin. It would be best if our kind understood the same, don't you think? The goblin reached into its tiny little pockets and removed a similar trinket to the one Eliana recovered. The goblin handed it to Eliana and said,
Hold this up whenever you feel lost or unsure of what to do.
Eliana nodded to the goblin, and the goblin ran into the woods. Eliana returned to the road. She wanted an adventure, but she did not expect this to happen. She contemplated what happened and where to go from here. She heard the pirates returning to Vesuva from the road she just traveled. They were pushing a cart of the treasure they just looted. Eliana really didn't want to encounter these pirates again, especially now that she knew that they were the villains of the story. She held the trinket up, and it began to glow. When the pirates reached the path, they saw the trinket, similar to the one they gave Eliana, and beside it, they saw a fresh pair of goblin footprints.
Alright, so I muted it at the beginning, and then I transitioned and Tim told me that I was muted, which I didn't realize until I swapped back and started playing it. That's probably going to happen a lot, because I'm muting myself, and then I'm muting the YouTube tab just because I don't want it to autoplay when I click on it while I'm still talking. So I just forgot to unmute it, so that's probably going to happen like 100 more times. So be prepared for that. Unless I just remember to set it up right after, like I'm doing now. All right, Janine did such a good job with that one, man. Like, dude, the goblin voice. I feel so bad for like so like I write them, and I don't expect them to like fully act them out like that. So like I've been writing them with the idea that like I would probably be reading them, because I wrote a lot of these ahead of time. So like I wasn't gonna do the goblin voice if I did it myself. But now it's like, dang, like she straight up did it. And now there's like the bar is set, man. Janine set the bar. So she committed, man, and I respect her for it, and I'm grateful that she did, because it makes the story a lot better in my opinion. But yeah, she has such a cool accent. She reads one more in the first set of 10. Where like her accent comes out a little bit more. I love her accent so much. But yeah, so she did a great job with this one. Eliana's an interesting character that's possibly coming back at some point. Probably not for a while, but eventually. The female pirate that's leading the pirates, because I love my female pirates. She's got a story in the next set. And it's explained why the pirates don't kill Eliana. Meanwhile, they just slaughtered a bunch of goblins like it was, you know, a Tuesday, and they were M. Bison. But, yeah, so that's going to be explained. Don't worry. I know that's kind of like a plot hole. Like, how the heck did she go in there and the pirates just didn't straight up kill her? But you'll find out why. And fantasy distraction number, I think it's going to be 16. I'm doing a lot of setup here. I'm doing it unintentional, but kind of smart marketing. Yeah, so Eliana, she just wants adventure. She's super hot. She can have whatever she wants, but all she wants is more meaning in life. You like the M. Bison reference? Yeah, all she wants is more meaning in life and adventure and excitement. She doesn't want to just be like a housewife and a trophy wife and be boring. She wants more meaning in her life, so she goes out to look for it and you know, learn some things that she probably wasn't expecting to learn and probably didn't want to learn. But you know, Fenrir is an interesting planet, and it's kind of similar to ours in a way, where you find out that, you know, sometimes humans and people are a lot scarier than goblins. That's your lesson. If you take nothing else from this live stream, sometimes humans are worse than goblins. There you go. You're welcome. Dropping that knowledge. Okay, so the next one, the next one is also read by Jake. This one, this one is interesting. You know what? Let's listen to it first. Hopefully I don't screw this up again. Is the tab unmuted? No, it's not. I would have screwed it up again. See, I'm going to mess this up a lot, but we'll get it down eventually. By the time we do about like 80 of these, I'm probably still going to make the mistake. Let's be real. All right, let's listen to this one and then we'll talk about it.
This might seem a bit odd, but the story I'm about to tell you is one about a bard named Tabor. Now I know what you might be thinking. Aren't the bards the ones who usually tell the stories? Normally, you would be right. But Tabor is a unique case, and just a unique man in general. Our story begins in a bar called Cookie's Secret. I frequent this bar quite often, and I have never met a person named Cookie or even saw someone eating a cookie. So your guess is as good as mine as to where the name comes from. But that's not important. What is important is that I was in this bar during the Great Moon War. Much like Cookie's Secret, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We're on the planet Ender, and this war definitely did not take place on either of our moons. But again, not really important. While I'm in this bar during wartime, I meet this guy named Frank. I talk to him for a while before he interrupts our conversation to beat up some rude guy giving a girl at the bar a hard time. Next thing I know, I hear this funky-sounding harp blaring from the stage behind me. Lo and behold, there he is, Tabor, rocking out on this harp. He's singing, but I can hardly hear him over Frank beating this dude up next to me, so I make my way closer. Much to my surprise, Tabor is singing about Frank, the stuff he literally just did. Saving the girl at the bar. I couldn't even hear Tabor singing on stage, so how the heck did he hear Frank confront this guy? I stand there, in awe, shimmying closer and closer to the stage as people move out of my way. I now have a front row seat to the weirdest concert ever, but it gets even weirder. With a slick movement of his hands, Tabor's harp turned into a violin. I thought I missed him switching out instruments, but I never took my eyes off of him. I was enamored as he sang about minuscule things happening all around us. Some nice guy buying someone a drink, someone picking up the tab, someone offering their coat to someone else to keep them warm, and of course, Frank made his way back into the song a few more times. It was the most bizarre thing I've ever experienced, but these shenanigans weren't done yet. Everything in the bar became eerily quiet when one of Tabor's strings on his ex-harp violin snapped. I gasped. Someone cried, and for some weird reason, we all turned to look at the entrance of the bar. Literally everyone in the bar turned at once to look at the entrance. I wanted to look behind me, to look at Tabor and see what struggles he was experiencing with the potential death of his violin, but something was preventing me from doing so. Then, the bar doors opened, and in walked Tabor? How did he get over there, I wondered. It was him, definitely him, but something was different. His hair was darker, his clothes were darker, and his violin was now a guitar. He began playing a different tune, and now he was singing about the stuff you would expect. Heroic tales, some of which must have been from different planets because they were most certainly not from Ender. He did a 2-minute set about some Starlight samurai guy that made 0 sense to the rest of us, but sounded great regardless. He sang about heroes defeating dragons and some planet-shattering battle on a mountaintop. The rest of the night was a blur. I woke up in my apartment, feeling more hungover than normal, and tried to piece together the few things I could remember. I grabbed my coat and headed out for Cookie's secret. If anyone else was there that had a similar encounter with Tabor's magnificence, then maybe they could help me piece together everything. When I got to the bar, it was burnt to the ground. All I found was a pile of ashes. The only logical conclusion I could make is that Tabor rocked this bar so hard it burned to the ground. But if that's the case, then how did I get out? How did anyone get out? I stood there for what seemed like hours just looking at the remnants of Cookie's secret. Every once in a while, I would go back to wondering why it was named that, but my super important thoughts got interrupted by a local. "You okay there?" I remember this woman asking me. I turned my head to look at her, and standing beside her was Tabor. He had his arm around her. I went to say something, and he put his finger to his lips to shush me. I asked if she had been at Cookie's secret last night. She laughed at me and said, "Last night? That place burned down years ago." Shocked, I quickly looked at where I just saw the smoldering remains of the bar I watched Tabor perform in, and it had been replaced by a restaurant called Brownies and Stuff. Another sweets reference was extremely ironic, I thought, but I looked back at them and noticed the woman was an employee there. She must have just gotten off her shift. I wanted to say something else, but Tabor took out a small notepad on the woman's apron and handed it to her. "You forgot to return your notepad, babe," he said, so cool and nonchalant. He ripped off a page before he handed it to her, and she said something like, "Silly me," and ran back inside. Tabor and I stood in an awkward silence for a few seconds as I conjured up the courage to say something. I needed answers. I needed to know what he did to everyone in the bar that night, but right before I spoke, the woman returned. He gave me a nod, and I watched as Tabor and this woman walked away from me. My next idea was to go inside for answers, but I heard 2 people exiting the restaurant. "We got lucky the Starlight Samurai came to Ender when he did," said the first person. Wasn't Tabor singing about him? I thought. "Hey, you dropped this," I heard the other person say. They were now right in front of me. I looked down and noticed the piece of paper on the floor. Tabor dropped it so that I would find it. I picked it up, and it read, "Welcome to the future. Rock on. Tabor."
Can we talk about how perfect that song was for it, though? I mean, Jake knocked it out of the park again on that one, but The song was so good. Like that one little like strum was always at like the perfect time. And I didn't even do that on purpose. Like I could probably take credit for that. But honestly, like the song lined up so perfectly with how Jake was telling the story that I didn't even have to change that. Like when I was listening back to it, like all synced together, it just happened to land that way. And I was like, dude, this is so good. So good. But that has to be like one of my favorite ones to pitch at the beginning. So Tamor is like so this takes place on a different planet. But he will factor into like the main story eventually. But pitching the story was so much fun. It's basically he's a time traveling bard, but what happens is when he performs, he time travels people against their will, like without them knowing. So he will pop up on Fenrir eventually, but I'm not sharing how or why or what his connection is to what's happening just yet. He will be mentioned again and will most likely have his own story again. But oh my god. Jake's reading of this one absolutely nailed it. Like, because like you listen to that other one from Jake, the Lord Kazai one, and then you listen to that one and he reads them like completely different. But he like I was in a voice chat with him and a lot of the guys who do these readings for something else. And I was pitching the idea to them at the time, and I mentioned this story because I had like just written this one. And I was like, so I got this story about this time traveling bard who time travels people against their will every time he performs. And they were just like, oh my god, that one sounds amazing. So he sends people to the time frame the story actually takes place in. Yeah, so he mentions the Starlight Samurai. Not necessarily on their well, I guess he would be on their planet at that time. And then the guy telling the story ends up within this time frame, right? Or at least in the future of the Starlight Samurai coming. The whole like building being burnt down to the ground kind of coincides with what I mentioned earlier about whenever the Starlight Samurai goes somewhere, he like literally trashes the place. So he kind of like he quickly time skips, right? So he's in his apartment. It's one timeline or time frame, right? And he goes there and the place is burned to the ground. So this is probably the exact moment when Starlight Samurai is running around causing problems. And then obviously once Tamor and his girlfriend pop up with this new building in front of him, that's a different time. So it's almost like he skipped time a little bit and he gets kind of like caught in the middle there until Tamor shows up, and it's like, okay, well, I'm in this timeline now. In the future, according to the note. I just picture like in animes where they just like draw like a little chibi face of themselves. I just picture like a little chibi Tamor and he's like, rock on. But yeah, man. Jake did a great job. The music, this one came together like perfect. Like the idea was funny. The story was funny when I wrote it. It was fun to pitch. Jake did an awesome job with it. And then the background music worked out so perfectly with how he read it that I didn't even have to change anything. It was this one was fun. This one was a fun one. And I like how Jake delivers some stuff. I want to do I'm barred out. I want to do I want to take some of the stuff from the readings and clip them and make them alerts or notifications, either just on YouTube or also on Twitch. I think that would be funny. Like when Jake goes, I stood there in awe. I want to clip that. I want to clip Janine's reading One of the things she says is the goblin. What was it? I was just thinking of it when we were listening to it. She said something really like funny as the goblin. I was like, I gotta clip that and just make it an alert. But yeah, I've been, as I listen to them, I'm always like, I should take some of these and just make them funny alerts. Do the rock out alert, yeah. Rock on. Jake's Tabor voice was pretty amazing too. Oh, that one's so much fun. I can't wait to write more of that character. I haven't wrote any more with him yet. So the next one that we're dipping into is about a mermaid goddess. So there's 4 gods on Fenrir. One is a wolf god. One is a mermaid goddess. One is a witch goddess. And then there's an elf god. So the way these are going to work, like instead of writing... So the first one's about the mermaid. Instead of doing like a follow-up to this story, what'll probably happen is the next one in this set will be about one of the other gods, and we'll just do it that way. But before we listen to this one is read by our buddy Zaff. I'm going to get his Twitch real quick. Twitch.tv/Zaffood_being. It is ZAFFOODD_BEING. Our buddy Zaff read this one. He did a great job with it as well. This one gets the most like natural views, I feel. People are interested in mermaids, I think. It has 9 likes, no dislikes. By natural views, I mean like I haven't really promoted this one much, and it's just getting views on its own. Whereas I've been like heavily promoting the others. I'm gonna promote this one soon, but it's been probably doing the best and the most consistent on its own. But before we listen to this one, I'm gonna run to the bathroom real quick. I could just play it so you guys can listen to it and then come back, but I like listening to them too, so I want to listen to it again and then talk about it. Just in case there's anything I forgot too. So I'm gonna use the bathroom real fast. I could slap back on some of that Epidemic Sounds music. It might be a little loud though. Hold on. Let me lower our volume. I gotta remember to put the volume back up though. Slap some. I apologize if that was loud for anyone else. That was super loud for me because I put my volume up. I'm deaf now. I hope nobody else is deaf now. Of course, it happened to be like a really loud song on Epidemic. Alright, I'll be right back and then we'll listen to number 7. Alright, I'm back. Just not on the screen yet. Here I am. Hello. If any of you guys subscribed to me on YouTube, thank you for that. I think I went up a subscriber. I'm supposed to get notifications, but it didn't bother. And it also doesn't show it in my notification feed, but my subscriber count definitely went up. So, thank you if that was anybody in here. Alright, let me pause this. Put the volume back up. Alright, so, yeah, next one's about a mermaid goddess. Read by our buddy Zaff. And we're gonna just jump right into it. As soon as I make sure the volume's on. I don't do that again. Alright, looks like volume's good. I hope you guys like mermaids. And fishing rivalries. I'll be right back. Yeah, I'll be right back. We're gonna watch this together. I don't know why I said I'll be right back. I'm so used to saying I'll be right back when I'm like stepping away. Alright, so let's watch this and then we'll talk about it.
Vorpal is a big town known for its docks. Water's been a symbol of this town for years, and fishing has been its main source of income and trade. You'd think the fish would learn by now that we're looking for them, but yet they're always there. That might sound normal, but I don't mean we're always able to fish. I mean they're always there in abundance. Nearly every fishing trip is worth it here in Vorpal. We have Morska, the mermaid goddess, to thank for that. Though the story of Morska dates way back before most of the citizens of Vorpal were even born. Fenrir is the home to 4 deities, and Morska is the one we worship here in Vorpal. We have always worshipped fish here in general, but we weren't always the only option for people to get their angling needs. We once had a rival town known as Henton. The people of Henton were always jealous of our good fortune, especially when it came to our fishing. Our prices were better, and our harvests were too. How they ever kept up is still a mystery, with the astonishing difference in fish numbers and variety. What seemed like friendly competition between Vorpal and Henton at first grew more and more treacherous over time, and soon the people of Henton became desperate. One day, a group of Henton citizens attacked Vorpal in hopes of sabotaging a fishing festival that is held yearly here in Vorpal. The plan was to use explosives lined with fire magic, so the fuses wouldn't go out in the water and blow up all the fish, thus ruining our harvest, and subsequently our tradition. The night before the festival, the people from Henton arrived to do their worst, but when they got to the docks, they saw a blue-skinned woman standing at the edge, waiting for them. Now. I know you must be wondering how Morska could be standing there waiting if she was a mermaid. But Morska is capable of taking on many forms. And this very particular one, had legs. The people from Henson confronted her, and she warned them not to do what they had planned, but only seeing a single woman as their obstacle, decided to throw the explosive into the water despite Morska's warning. A few seconds went by, and Morska stood there patiently. The explosives never happened, and the people from Henton rushed to the other parts of the dock to find their explosives fizzled out, despite the fire magic protecting them. Morska asked them why they would do such a thing. Vorpal ruins our income every year, one said. Instead of bargaining with the people of Vorpal, you kill the fish, Morska replied. The people of Henton had tried to bargain with the people of Vorpal before, but the truth is their methods of bargaining were often hostile by nature. They tried to explain this to Morska, and she simply laughed at them. The one leading this group from Henton took offense to the laughter and shoved Morska into the waters of Vorpal. Let's get out of here, their leader said, defeated. But this was not the only defeat they would experience this night. as Morska emerged from the water in her mermaid form and grew to a massive size. She told the people of Henton that as long as their feud with Vorpal continued, that there would be no longer fish in their waters, but until they made peace with Vorpal and learned their place among the market, that harvests would be bare. The next morning, the fishing festival was the most extravagant the people of Vorpal had ever seen. New fish were caught as water magic danced in the sky as above the docks. The amount of fish caught seemed to be endless. The people visiting the town to make purchases seemed to be triple the amount the year prior. Our town's mayor at the time went to the docks to see why they were having such a successful festival, and Morska, in her blue-skinned human form, was waiting at the docks. I promise that as long as the people of Vorpal act peacefully towards the people of Henton, that your harvest will remain bountiful, Morska said. That as long as that they are thankful for the fish that give them food and riches beyond measure, that I will protect them. And with a simple raise of her hand, she was engulfed in the blue smoke that transformed her back into her mermaid form, and once again she grew in size, this time presenting herself to the people of Vorpal. I am Morska, she declared, the mermaid goddess of Fenrir. Worship me, and every festival from now on shall be enriched from both a lucrative standpoint and a spiritual one. The next year, the fishing festival was named the Morska Festival, in honor of the new goddess. While the people of Henton refused to swallow their pride, in May months, Henton became a ghost town. Without the harvest people starved, they had to move on elsewhere, find somewhere new to live. It remains that way till this very day. While the Morska Festival remains the most glorious day of the year in Vorpal.
I love the way he ends that one. In Vorpal. Yeah, so, you know, if a goddess comes to you and says, hey, you gotta worship me or I'm gonna not bring any fish to your village, maybe you should worship her, because now Henton is, nobody lives there anymore. She wiped them out. But yeah, so like the gods and goddesses are pretty important too. We learn more about them more in the next set than in this set, but they're pretty important to the story too, obviously. So they all kind of have their own personalities, and they're all gods and goddesses of different things. But Morska is one of them, and she doesn't mess around. I really wanted to get art made for this one too, and I probably will get art made of her eventually, but I wasn't able to for this one, but soon hopefully we could get some made of her. And yeah, so Zaff did a great job with that one too. She's interesting. So I don't pick any of the accents that they choose to do, just in case anybody's wondering. Because I think he made like the bad guys like Russian or something. That's fine. It is what it is. I kind of like that they put their own interpretation on it. So that's all good. But yeah, so that's one of the gods and goddesses. I have something about that I wanted to share, but I can't remember all of it off the top of my head because I'm coming up with ideas like constantly for this. Do I have it written down or do I have it in here? Nope, I must have it written down. One moment, please. Technical difficulties. You hear me turn in notebook pages. Totally prepared at all times. Right, so she is kind of like the... Like, I mean, obviously, like, fish and, like, prosperity and stuff and, like, spiritual vibes going on. But she's also the goddess of adventure because of sailing and stuff. So she kind of factors into a lot of different things. I didn't really want the gods and goddesses to be like limited to specific things, so they do kind of cover a lot of stuff. Like the wolf god was kind of like the one meant to be like the god of war essentially and battle, but he also has to do with like kind of harvest and prosperity in a sense as well. The witch is just kind of like evil. Like she doesn't really help anything. She's just kind of the evil god / goddess. She does her own thing. Doesn't really care too much about anybody's well-being. And the elf god is kind of like the god, like more so like to do with things of like more like whimsical and like free-spirited fun kind of god. Like he is the god of like culture and probably the god that Tabor would like, because he probably rocks on from time to time. But yeah, so Morska is pretty much that story is just kind of setting up some things that are coming in the future. That rivalry between the two towns is going to be important at some point. There's going to be some characters that were from that town that she kind of cut off from their way to make money and make a living and survive. So that's gonna come back into play at some point. But that story is pretty straightforward. It's Morska establishing herself as a goddess, pitching her case to two different towns. One town takes her, one town denies her, and the consequences that follow. All right, this next story I read. I hate listening to myself read these, but I don't think I did that bad on this one. But this one is about a trickster. Very, very Loki vibes, because I like me some Loki. And yeah, let's listen to it and then we'll talk about it.
How do the others do it? Oh yes, sit down and let me tell you a tale. Or something like that. Many years ago, in a town called Onate, rumors began to spread of a wise hermit with incredible power. Many believed these rumors to be false, as adventurers and common folk alike would travel beyond Onate's walls to seek out this wise hermit. The reasoning was almost always different. Some wanted to become powerful themselves, some wanted to become rich, some wanted fame, some needed healing or a family member healed, and so on and so on. Yet often these people would not return from their journey. The hermit was hard to find, and many believed those who went out to seek him entered the less friendly parts of Onate's outskirts, thus meeting their end. Others believed people were so obsessed with finding him that even after checking everywhere outside Onate, they pushed even further beyond the walls. Surely if he isn't just outside Onate, then he must be somewhere else, they thought. But the truth was, this hermit was not a wise hermit at all, but instead a trickster by the name of Drew. So why would Drew do such a thing to the people of Onate? Well, let's just say Drew wasn't much different from those adventurers or the common folk. Those fortunate enough to actually find Drew, the trickster, were often tricked and swayed to part ways with their valuables in return for power or riches. Neither of which they received in return, of course, and how conveniently that when they went back for a refund, the trickster was gone. The less fortunate of the bunch saw through Drew's lies, so the trickster was forced to silence them in order to keep up the ruse. In those rare cases, it just meant Drew could take what he wanted. The manner of people that sought him out was what you would expect. The brutish barbarian types, the desperate maidens, and the helplessly too intelligent for their own good types. Those last ones Drew hated the most, and they were often the ones he gutted. Normal and expected was fine with Drew, though, because if he always faced what he expected, then he could never lose. The odds were always in his favor, until one day he met an orc by the name of Rhyron. Orcs, typically, were not the brightest, and this Drew knew for sure. Once he saw Rhyron's exterior, he pinned him down as one of those brutish types with a barbaric nature, but much to Drew's surprise, Rhyron was much more intelligent than he anticipated. So the orc saw through his lies and deception, but Drew could neither outrun nor defeat Rhyron in battle. So Drew did what any good trickster would do. He stalled until he figured it out. Rhyron was there to seek the wise hermit's power to cure his hurt lover that was injured in a previous encounter. Drew offered him a concoction in exchange for Rhyron's gold. The orc obliged the trickster, but the actual injury was Rhyron's instead, which he revealed under his cloak. So when the orc put the concoction on his wounds, the potion didn't work. This infuriated Rhyron. "Do you think me a fool, trickster?" said the orc. "The potion takes time," the trickster replied. "Plus, you lied. The potion doesn't like liars." This only pushed Rhyron further into fury, and he revealed a sharp axe he was hiding beneath his cloak. "Wait a second," Drew put his hand out to stop him. "Allow me to explain. In the ancient times, there was a wizard who didn't fight his battles with magic or weapons. He fought each fight with words. Hard to believe, I know, but before I was this, I was a thief. I looked for this wizard to teach me, because if I could rob people with just my words, then I would be the greatest thief alive. I would never face conflict, and I would never face trouble like this. So what I did was I learned of his whereabouts and asked him to train me. But the wizard said his skills could not be taught, that his powers were a gift that even he could not explain. But I am smarter than I look, so I found the source of his power, an amulet he wore around his neck. You see, this old wizard was a trickster himself and tried to play me for a fool, but much like you, I saw through it. Or did you? Because if my powers are words and you've been listening this whole time, then you have already lost. I snatched that amulet from that old wizard's corpse, and now I control the narrative of every story I'm in. So tell me, did I win? Is it truly a sinner's sin to take advantage of those weaker when it is they who are the seeker? And when they find me, I make them climb an endless ladder, rung by rung, until I get what I desire with this gifted silver tongue. You see, the only ruse is what I choose, and none of this you can rely on. None of this was true at all, not Onate, the Hermit, or Rhyron. Don't worry though, I won't harm you. After that wizard, my killing days were over. It's true what they say. Killing is a heavy burden to shoulder. Now I thank you for your riches, and beg you to remember that persuasion is not a crime. And with that, and a tip of my hat, I'm gone. Until next time.
Technically, I should have just ended the stream right there. Wouldn't that have been creepy? Yeah, so the background music for that song, the whispers are built into it. Okay, that wasn't any extra. That is a song on Epidemic Sounds that is called, hold on. That is called Before You Know, which is appropriate title for this. Luella Gren is the person who makes it. Luellagren. Those little creepy whispers are part of it. Built in. Yeah, so I don't know. I liked the idea of this story. I didn't think I was going to be the one reading it. I actually had somebody else lined up to read it, but plans fell through. So I had to record it. Now, these come out every Monday. I had to record it on a Saturday night, and it's a pretty complicated story. And I don't have a lot of experience in doing these voiceover things, so I had to throw this together in like a single night. But I think I did okay. The main concept is obviously he's telling the story about himself, and then the plot twist is that he controls people with his words, and you've been listening the whole time, tricking those readers or listeners. You've been listening the whole time, so the idea is that the viewer has been tricked, and then he robs all your riches, but not really, but you know. But yeah. Oops. I thought that was a pretty cool concept when I was writing it. I was like, well, what if he is telling the story the whole time, and then he tricks the reader or the listener into what he does to people anyway, which is scamming them out of their riches. A little bit of rhyming in that one too. There's some rhymes at the end, but I just thought he was a pretty cool character, and he pops up more in the future also. Very Loki-esque in the sense that those gods we were just talking about, the gods and goddesses, he messes with them a lot. So like that's kind of his thing, is like messing with the gods and goddesses, and you know, whatever people think is like the norm, or like he messes with heroes and he messes with villains. He just messes with whoever he feels like messing with. But that power is very strong. So I think a lot of his stories and a lot of the stuff that he's going to tie into is most likely going to be things that have happened already. So when he does pop up, it'll be things that have already happened. And then when we finally see him in like a current story, things will be a bit different, because his power is really strong. Like that is a pretty crazy power to have. Like if I could just speak and control people, or, you know, it's pretty powerful. It's pretty OP. So we gotta kind of dance around that carefully when we use it without it becoming too broken. Which I plan to do anyway. So I already kind of have ideas for that. So please look forward to it. Hashtag Final Fantasy 14. Okay. So the next one is still on Fenrir, but it takes place on a different continent. So Fenrir is kind of like this ever-changing planet and evolving planet. I'm actually going to do a story later. It was supposed to be in the next set, but I've pushed it back to probably the third set. But I'm going to do a story that's about the planet, like the planet itself, because Fenrir itself has a lot of stuff going on that it's pretty interesting and should be pretty cool to explore. I don't want to give away too much of it yet, but yeah, there's some weird things happening on the with the planet itself. So you'll start to learn more of that as the stories go, and so because it's such a big planet and it's ever changing and evolving, this next story takes place on like a whole other continent. So it's still in the same world. These are all kind of in different timelines, but it's still in the same like universe, and but it's just taking place somewhere else. So I think that's all the setup you really need for this one. Janine is back to read this one. She did an awesome job with this. And I actually recorded a version of this that will probably never see the light of day. I wasn't sure if Janine was going to be able to have time to record it, so I recorded it myself because I didn't think she was going to send me the file in time. And then she recorded it and sent it to me, so it was saved, and I was able to throw it together. Also, I threw it together on Sunday. These come out on Monday, but luckily, like they send me these audio files with like, I don't have to edit anything really. Little tidbit for this one though, I thought, like, I pronounced the character's name as Rima, and and Janine pronounces it as Rema, and I like Rema a lot better. So, in the future, it's Rema. Okay. In case anybody's wondering. Including myself. Okay. Let's watch it, and then we'll talk about it.
Princess Rima, said Orion as he entered Rima's quarters. She was sitting at a table, writing in a notebook. Have you finished your studies? Rima closed the notebook and turned to her keeper. Orion was trusted with protecting Princess Rima at all costs. Chosen by King Tristan and Queen Amela, Orion was the most seasoned warrior in the kingdom of Sabia. Sabia was located on the southeasternmost continent of Fenrir and rarely had any visitors, a desert land that, at times, felt like an entirely different world. Where Orion came from, the king and queen never knew. He showed up one day and saved the king from a monster out in the desert. A grizzly gray beard, shaggy gray hair, and scars to mark his past adventures, Orion quickly moved up the ranks before being trusted to the princess. Something that Rima was very grateful for. Her and Orion had become close, and with his help, her potential to be the strongest, most intelligent ruler in all of Sabia grew with each day. Orion approached Rima at her desk and knelt down in front of her. Rima wasn't a little girl anymore, and her day as queen would soon arrive. But Orion, having protected her for many years, remembered when she was just a child. Please, Orion, Princess Rima stood up to greet her guardian. No need to kneel before me. Orion laughed as he stood. Apologies, Princess. I have just returned from the markets. The markets? Did you bring me something? Orion wasn't the only one who recalled Rima's days as a child, and her sense of wonder and excitement over a potential present made them both feel reminiscent of the old days. I did. Orion presented the princess with a small pendant. It was the color of the sand that filled the kingdom of Sabia, and etched upon it was the word Queen. It's beautiful! I love it, said Princess Rima. Orion bowed to his princess. Let it be a reminder that one day you shall rule this land with honor. Unfortunately for them both, the king and queen did not feel Rima was fit to rule Sabia and would prefer a son on the throne. That's where things got complicated. A prophet foresaw the future for the king and queen and told them it would be impossible for them to conceive, but with a magical item fetched from the main continents of Fenrir, Queen Amela found a way. The item was rare and would only allow for one use, and that use brought much joy to the king and queen in the form of Rima. Despite having limited options, the king and queen soon realized that Rima may not be a strong enough leader even with Orion's guidance. There were no other options that they could think of, but they approached some of their elders for advice. If something were to happen to Rima, then the next child in their bloodline would sit on the throne. The child in question would be Eritos, one of Rima's male cousins. The king and queen felt so strongly about not leaving the kingdom of Sabia and Rima's rule that they considered their options. One day, while walking with Orion, Rima overheard her parents discussing potential ways to deny her the throne. The truth is, Rima didn't much care for becoming the queen of Sabia, but she knew the only way to avoid it would be to be removed from the conversation altogether. By any means necessary. She contemplated her options and thought maybe she could appeal to them to let her and Orion leave the continent. Sabia was all desert, and she had read about and heard tales of the beautiful places elsewhere in Fenrir. That night, she thought it best to pitch her plans to Orion before her parents. However, when she arrived in Orion's quarters, she found her trusted guard in chains, her parents standing in front of him. Come here, my dear daughter, said King Tristan, but Rima knew what they potentially had in store for her, so she ran. She ran as fast as she could, making it out of the castle and running barefoot into the desert. It was nighttime, but the ground was still hot and she could only go so far. Eventually, her parents' guards caught up to her and they returned her to the castle. Keep her here, said Queen Amela. Dig, she commanded. The guards were hesitant but loyal. They followed her orders and dug a hole big enough for the princess. Tears filled Rima's eyes as the guards knelt her down in front of the hole dug for her. She held something close to her chest, the pendant that Orion gave her. If only there were another way, said her mother, but no tears filled her eyes. Rima could tell her mother felt no remorse as she felt the flat part of her mother's sandal strike her chest. When she hit the base of the hole, she hit her head and things became blurry. It immediately became hard to hear, hard to breathe, and hard to see. The sound of the sand being pushed on top of her made her squirm and try to fight her way out, but she was too disoriented from the fall to put up much of a fight. The next day, King Tristan visited Orion in his cell. He explained that one day they would let him out to serve the kingdom of Sabia again, but at this point in time, they could not trust him. He had grown too close to Rima, and the king and queen feared that he would retaliate. That very same day, the king and queen invited young Eritos to their castle to discuss the future of their kingdom, and when they invited him into the grand dining hall, they had one more guest that they didn't expect. The guards laid on the floor with sand coming out of their mouths, and sitting at the head of the dining table was Princess Rima. All over her skin were tiny grains of sand, and the pendant that Orion had given her was imbued in her chest. It had become a part of her. The king and queen, as well as young Eritos, stood frozen in fear. "Princess!" Queen Amella began to say, but Rima stood up slowly from her chair. You could hear more grains of sand fall off her body as she rose. "I am princess no longer," said Rima. "From this day forward, you will address me as queen." "Don't be silly, child! I am the—" Before Queen Amella could finish her sentence, Rima turned her into a sand statue, then did the same to her father, the king. Eritos stood there for a moment and came to the conclusion that running was not an option. Instead, her young cousin knelt down before his new queen. Rima ignored the gesture and slowly walked beside the table. The food set up for the former king and queen to court young Eritos was still on the table. Rima picked a grape and ate it. "Doesn't quite taste the same now," she said as she chewed. "Do you know why that is, cousin?" Because you were dead?" Eritos replied. Rima shook her head in disappointment as she walked over to her cousin. Eritos stood up as she approached him. "No, no, my dear, sweet cousin. It's because I've never felt more alive, and I hunger for something sweeter, something Sabia can't provide." "Name it, cousin," said Eritos. "Whatever you want, I shall retrieve it for you." Rima turned around slowly and looked at the chair she was sitting in. It wasn't a throne, but in her eyes it took on the form of it. She looked back at Eritos. "It can't be you who retrieves it. You already tried to take my seat once. I can't let that notion go unpunished." The guards outside of the dining room soon heard the screams of Eritos, but before they could enter the room, Rima opened the doors. They stood in disbelief as Princess Rima stood before them, transformed. It was the same two guards that helped bury her. She grabbed one by the throat and filled his lungs with sand. She turned to the other and said, "Bring me Orion."
I'm so jealous of her accent, man. Her accent is so cool. It really is nice for this kind of story, too. Her accent is so cool, man. She did such a good job with that one, too. Yeah, so Rima, I wanted to do like a really big like revenge type story, and also like kind of a messed up one where like the parents aren't allowed to have any kids, man, and then they find a way to have a kid, and then they have a kid and they choose to kill her because they don't want her on the throne to like continue their legacy. So instead they settle for one of her cousins. Like, it's so messed up. I'm your queen now. Exactly. I like the little pendant that says queen on it. Like, that's such like a, like you find stuff like that in 2020. Like queen is like, you know, the thing now. But I just like thought that concept was kind of funny too. Like, he goes to market and he finds there like some jewelry with queen on it, like queen bee. But yeah, so she's a cool character, and she is going to pop up a lot more in the future. But Orion is an interesting character. He's gonna have a complicated backstory, and I don't know how much of it we're gonna explore soon, but there will be some stories that are about him traveling to the main continents on Fenrir to retrieve these things for Rima. But yeah, man, this story, Janine did such a good job, and I really like the way that it came out. I'm really happy she was able to record it because her version is way better than the one that I recorded. That one was, I mean, it was pretty basic, but she brought like a lot of life to it. Plus she has a cool accent. and I'm trash. But even though I'm reading the next one, it's cringe. But yeah, so she did such a great job. Really cool story. I like kind of the setup for it. You get introduced to Orion and Rima pretty like immediately, and their relationship is pretty deep. And she confides in him so much that she's going to talk to him instead of her parents to try to figure out a solution to these problems. And right when she's about to do that, her parents make their move. And thanks to that pendant that he bought earlier in the day at the market, or it's probably like a day later, but earlier in the story, I should say. Thanks to that pendant, he saved her life, and now she's back as some mummy, like the Mummy movies, kind of undead Queen of Sand. But yeah, she, her name means sand in Muslim. That's where I kind of got the idea from it. Just browsing names and their meanings. Her name literally means sand in Muslim. So it fits. And it's fun. And it's cool. Alright, so we only have one more to watch. And then we'll wrap this up. It's the 10th one that I am voicing. This one was also supposed to be Jake reading. But he had a like family trip or something to go on. And he wasn't able to record it in time for me. Which is totally fine. I just read it myself. Probably would have been a lot better if Jake got to do it, but I don't think it came out too bad. The pacing on this one, I'm trying to keep them between like 5 and 7 minutes. And I think I may have went a little overboard on like trying to keep the pace. So the edits might be a little fast. I don't know. At least that's how I hear it. Maybe it's not that big of a deal. Maybe now that I mentioned it, you guys might hear it. Maybe I should have just kept my mouth shut. Who knows? But just a fair warning that the pacing is a little faster than it probably should be. But in the future, I'm just gonna ignore that, and just however long it ends up being, it ends up being. I'm trying to keep them between like 2 to 4 pages. But the ones that are going like between 3 and 4 pages are ending up like way longer than I intended these to be. At least for now. Like I wasn't trying to make them 10-minute videos. Like I know a lot of YouTube creators try to keep their videos like 10 minutes. I don't really want to do that, at least not yet. So I'm trying to keep the stories a little more around the 4 to like 7 minutes. I think they're just like nice, quick little, you can listen to one. If you don't have time to listen to the whole playlist, it's something you could go back to later when you just have like 5 minutes, 6 minutes to kill. And you just want to hear like a cool fantasy story, that's kind of what I was going for. Yeah, so we're going to listen to the 10th one. We'll talk about that. We'll wrap things up. And then, yeah, anybody that's here still, I appreciate you being here. Thank you guys for hanging out. And, anybody looking for my Twitch streams, we'll be back on Twitch tomorrow night for the Ganyu banner and Genshin Impact. That should be a fun time. If you don't follow me on there, I am twitch.tv/Val, VAL, _Starlight. Very similar to the Starlight Samurai. It's all making sense. Everything's connected. Everything is connected. All right. Let's watch this and then we're out of here.
To understand why Jack is such a troubled man, you first need to know about his life before he stepped foot in the bog. Jack was born to 2 mercenaries, Alon and Purity Rhinestone. His mother and father were well known throughout Fenrir for some time. Once Jack was born, they took on less jobs. That doesn't mean they stopped working completely. Sure, they had enough money to take some time off to raise Jack, but they wanted their son to be exposed to their lifestyle at an early age. Needless to say, mercenary work isn't the best place for a child. Alon and Purity were not going to win any Parents of the Year awards anytime soon, but that didn't stop them from bringing Jack with them no matter what the job was. Stopping a monster from terrorizing a village,
shutting down a bandit camp, or retrieving an important item for a magistrate. No matter what the task, and of course as long as the money was right, Alon and Purity were there to get the job done, with baby Jek in tow. As Jek grew, his parents immediately put him to work. Before he could fight, he would carry and sharpen the weapons. While he learned the ropes of persuasion, he acted as his parents' distraction. Once he was old enough to hold his own, he acted more as a partner than a hindrance. As he gained experience, Alon and Purity would let him lead assignments, and soon he became the best mercenary in all of Fenrir, despite being only 20 years old. So now you have to ask yourself, if he was such a popular and successful mercenary, why does nobody talk about him now? What happened? What changed so drastically that he went from the one person everyone would seek out for a tough task to just an afterthought? The answer to all of those questions dates back to when Alon and Purity finally let their son work on his own. Jek's parents began to take on less because mercenary work in general is pretty taxing on the body, and they were starting to get too old to travel and fight all the time. So instead of stopping Jek's momentum and success, they finally let their son go out on his own. Jek took on many solo missions from all walks of Fenrir, from the port of Vesuva to Vorpal, from Askar to the Stone District. If a citizen or a royal had a job, then Jek was their man. However, outside of hard-to-reach continents like Sabia, there was one place that Alon and Purity refused to work and would often warn Jek about. The southern half of Fenrir was a place clouded in darkness. Known to the people of Fenrir as the Deadlands, the southern region was where the goddess of witches, Aradia, was worshipped. It was an area that no one dared go, and if they did, they never returned. Alon and Purity would often tell tales of this land and warn Jek that if he ever saw a job or was approached about a job in the Deadlands, to steer clear of it at all costs. But this would not be the first time someone fell victim to their own hubris. Despite his origins and the arrogance of his parents, Jek was more of an honorable man than a prideful one, until once again faced with a mission to the Deadlands. He never found a mission or job that challenged him once he was older and working on his own. He never faced an enemy he could not defeat, an item he couldn't find, or a puzzle he couldn't solve. At times he felt invincible, even if he chose not to show it. One day when jobs were slow and he didn't have much work to do, Jek entered a tavern in search of work. A board was placed in the back of the tavern with odd jobs for mercenaries like Jek. It was in this tavern that his mother and father would often take him as a boy to pick up work. But there was something off about the board on this specific day. Every single job posting involved the Deadlands. All of the other jobs were taken, but since no one voluntarily entered the Deadlands, they were the only jobs left. Feeling sure of himself, Jek took on one of those jobs. Ironically, this job was to go find out the fate of another mercenary who took a job in the Deadlands and never returned. You would think that would be enough of a warning to second-guess his decision, but Jek was determined to defy the odds. As he prepared to make his journey to the Deadlands, Jek returned home to see his family just in case. His mother was the only one home that day and saw right through his intentions, as she usually did, especially when Jek started asking some questions about the Deadlands. "I know you and father have always warned me about it, but what's so scary about the Deadlands anyway?" asked Jek. "Hard to tell for sure," replied his mother. "Most people don't even make it across the bog." "The bog?" asked Jek. "There is a large-scale swamp that covers the entirety of the entrance to the Deadlands known as the bog. All manner of creatures and ghouls call it their home. Your father and I were there once, briefly." Jek continued to pick his mother's brain about that encounter. Purity told Jek that she and Alon took a job in the Deadlands once, and after just a few minutes in the bog, were forced to retreat and return the job to the board. It was the job that convinced them to never return there, and the source of their warnings for Jek. Purity didn't like the idea of Jek going there, and Jek tried to deny his intentions, but his mother knew there would be no swaying him. "Take this." Purity reached into a wooden drawer and retrieved a golden compass. "We've never tested it ourselves, but your father and I bought this from a merchant in Askar. It will shine a light to help you get out of the Deadlands if you get lost." Jek accepted the gift from his mother and said his farewells before leaving for the Deadlands. With the compass in hand, he approached the outskirts of the bog. He knelt down just before where the green grass turned into black tar and closed his eyes. He prayed to no god in particular for the safety of his mother and father, then rose and stepped foot into The bog. All right, so this is how I feel about the editing in that video. I'm just picky probably because I'm like it's my project and I'm the one reading it, and I think I'm terrible, but maybe I'm not as bad as I think. I don't know. The editing makes me think that it's like every other YouTube video out there, you know, like when they're trying to like teach you something or sell you something, or like the editing's like so funny to me. Like when you like really listen to it. I don't know, maybe I should just stop talking. But it's like I don't know, it's just some parts get cut up in a weird way where it's like you could see somebody like getting edited while explaining like Fortnite tips and tricks or something like that. Anyway, so Jack is an interesting character and pretty important. Also going forward, I know I've said that about a lot of the stories, but these first 10 really set like the groundwork for the overall story that will be told over the course of these fantasy distractions. Now, I'm planning to do these for as long as I can keep going. So I think it's important to kind of like plant these seeds now, but also still make the stories standalone, like I mentioned earlier. So a lot of these characters are important later, and they'll be referenced a lot. But probably won't get like direct character development until like another story about them specifically comes around. So you get like little tidbits here and there. The Ingvar and Kazai stuff is kind of like an overall story that's being told. The Starlight Samurai stuff is kind of a story that's going to be more in the future. We'll get little pieces of that thrown in here and there as we go. But that's one that's probably going to be more important as we really get like deep into these. Mostly because they take place on a different planet right now, so and there isn't a whole lot happening specifically on Fenrir with him. Same with Tabor, and but everybody else is kind of relevant and tied in some way or capacity. And I think this Jack story probably has the biggest cliffhanger, and also like in a way probably like the least amount of information about Jack. Like it's really more so about like his parents and his upbringing, and then kind of goes right into like he steps into the bog and then we don't know what happens. But I started writing an ebook that was set in this world, like on this planet. And in that ebook, Jack is the main character. So I always knew that the 10th fantasy distraction was going to be about Jack, and it was going to be kind of like his origins. In case I ever do want to release that ebook, a lot of this stuff is going to tie directly into that ebook. But if the fantasy distractions that I'm uploading here on YouTube do well, it will probably surpass the idea of the ebook. And then I will take my thoughts and ideas for the ebook and kind of like meld them into the fantasy distractions. So in a weird way, like I already know where a lot of these stories are going. Like I know where they're trying to get to. It's just a matter of doing these nice little stories that will kind of just build the world. And then if we end up doing the ebook stuff, we can still tie that in, but it'll be at a point where like those particular stories, you'll probably want to have heard the stories that led up to it. So those might not be as standalone as the ones that we're making now, but there is an overall story here that is going to be connected as we go. And hopefully I can continue to make them standalone in case people like, let's say I make like 200 of these. Somebody watches the 201st one for the first time. That's like their introduction to fantasy distractions. I don't want them to be completely lost. I want them to be able to like watch that and be like, oh wow, this was really good. And then when they go to watch the entire playlist, be like, oh, like this is that character, or this actually ties into the one that I just watched for the first time. So it's almost like they need to be connected, but they also need to stand alone. And that moment where you realize that they're connected has to happen after whichever one you watch first. So it's like, it's kind of this like backwards approach to storytelling, but I think it could be really cool and interesting if I pull it off. But hey, we've made 10 of these. It's not really like a full-on 10-week celebration because I made the first one like 6 months ago. And then the second one like 3 months ago. And then from 3 until the 10th one has all been every Monday since. But I'm going to try to be consistent with them now and only take a week off like if I absolutely cannot get the story done, get somebody to record it, and get it uploaded. So for the foreseeable future, I'll be doing these. We're going to have one of these live streams every 10. So I am designing the stories in a way that 10 is a set. So this is kind of just like the introductory set. They're not really going to have a theme until way later on, probably. So like later on, we'll start maybe doing like 10 that all kind of go together but still stand alone, but have like an overall theme to it. Like maybe if we ever really get into the Kazai and Ingvar stuff, that might be like a set of 10, you know, like when they go to war, or, you know, like maybe the mountain stuff might be like a 2-parter. I might do stuff like that later, but for now it's going to be 10. Once the day that the 10th one in the set airs, I'll do these live streams. So the next time we do one of these, it'll be on Fantasy Distraction number 20. So when number 20 drops, I'll do a live stream at night. Now that's like 10 weeks from today, which, I mean, the days go fast. So watch how fast the next stream comes along. But that'll be about 10 weeks from today, most likely on a Monday. I mean, it should be on a Monday as long as I'm consistent and keep up. So when Fantasy Distraction number 20 comes out, we'll do another one of these. And then we'll talk about those 10. And we'll tie them into these 10, and we'll talk about future 10, and we'll just keep going. The next one that's coming out next Monday, as of this moment, I am reading it. It is the continuation of Natalai's story, the first one, but it will also kind of stand on its own. And the idea is also, like, the way that I'm outlining these is the first one in each set. So the 11th one, the 21st, the 31st, etc., will be a continuation of one of them that will most likely, hopefully, stand alone. The 21st one is slightly different. I have the outline open here. Hold on. I have like this crazy detailed outline for these. Which is how I kind of stay on top of things, right? So Natalai was the first. Natalai is going to be the 11th. The second Natalai one is the 11th. So the Starlight Samurai was number 2. But what we're going to do for the 21st one, it's going to be a Starlight Samurai related story, but not quite on the same scale as some of these other continuations. You'll see what I mean when we get there. We'll talk about it more in the next stream because it'll be close. It'll be like the following one after that. And then like Eden was the third one. So if we make it to 31 of these, the 31st one will be a continuation of Eden. So far, so on and so forth. Like the 4th one is Kazai. So the 41st one will be Kazai. And that's kind of how we're going to do it. If I feel the need to add more stuff in about characters, like specific characters, if I feel like it's a good moment for it, I'll do that. I'm doing that kind of with the gods and goddesses, as well as Ingvar and Kazai a little bit. And there's a couple other stories that are going to kind of fall in between without kind of following that plan. But overall, that's kind of like my thinking going forward. Yeah, and I mean that's pretty much it. I appreciate anybody that watched. If you guys stayed for the whole thing, thank you so much. That's awesome. If you came through, if you're viewing this later, I'm gonna try to make this a YouTube video that anybody can view at any point. If you're viewing this later down the line, thank you. I appreciate you. And yeah, please look forward to some more fantasy distractions, and I'll see you guys in 10 weeks. Unless you want to watch me on Twitch. Twitch.tv/Val_Starlight. Gotta sneak in one more Twitch plug. I'm gonna add the all of the people that did guest voiceovers and all of the songs. Except maybe the ones at the beginning, because I don't remember which ones I played. All the songs to the description. And definitely go check those guys out. They helped me out big time with these and made them really more interesting than they would have been if I just read them all. But thank you guys for hanging out. I'll be back on Twitch tomorrow night for the Ganyu pulls. And that's going to be weirdly dated if anybody watches this in the future, right? If anybody plays Genshin Impact and they watch this video, they're just going to be like, this was made when Ganyu was coming out? That was like 500 million years ago. All right, well, hopefully these continue to do well. Some of them have some crazy views. I've been promoting my butt off to get these out there, so hopefully it takes off. And hopefully by the next time we do one of these, we'll have even more viewers, more people to chat about it, and be a little bit more successful. And hopefully be able to monetize and get some more pictures made. That's the goal. We want more pictures, and maybe animation. Yeah, maybe we'll do animation. Okay, I'm gonna cut myself off because I can talk about this for another 3 hours. But thank you guys so much for hanging out, and I hope you have a great night or morning or day. Year 2035. What's Genshin Impact, mommy? Exactly. Who's Ganyu? All right. Hope you guys have a great night. Tim, thank you so much for hanging out. Anybody else who's still hanging out in the chat, I appreciate you. And catch you guys in 10 weeks.